Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking closely at two tiny words that you probably use every single day without even thinking about them. A and the.
That's right, those little words. They're called articles, and, they may seem simple, but there's a lot more to them than meets the eye. We linguists, we find them fascinating.
Okay, so as a fellow linguist myself, I have to ask, what's so fascinating about A and the? We learn them in elementary school, right? Like basic grammar.
We do, but the fascinating part is how much they can reveal about the evolution of language and how we organize information. To start with, we have to understand that articles are part of a larger group of words called determiners.
Determiners, right. Those are words that give us extra information about a noun. So this, that, some, many. Those are all determiners.
Exactly, and articles, a and the, they're like the superstars of the determiner world.
Superstars, okay, I'm intrigued. So where did these superstar articles come from?
Well, like many words in English, their origins are actually quite ancient. Let's take "the," for example. It evolved from the Old English word, pronounced "the."
The. Interesting. Almost like the, with a little extra oomph at the end.
Right, and if we trace it back even further, "fee" has roots in Proto-Germanic languages. It's remarkable to see these, linguistic connections stretching across centuries.
Wow. That's a journey through time. So "the" has a long history. What about "a"? Does it have an equally impressive family tree?
Oh, absolutely. And this is where it gets really interesting. A actually comes from the Old English word for one, which was an.
Wait, one. That's unexpected. How did a word for a specific number become this general article that we use all the time?
That's the beauty of language evolution. Over time, an gradually lost its strong numerical meaning. It became less about referring to, a single thing and more about indicating any member of a category.
So a huge shift in meaning from specific to general. That's fascinating. So to recap, "the" evolved from "the," pointing to something specific, and "a" came from "one." But now it's broader, referring to any example of something. Did I get that right?
You got it. And that distinction, specific versus general, that's at the heart of what articles do for us in English.
Okay, starting to see why articles are more than just basic grammar. But before we get into their functions, I'm curious about their names. Why are they called A and the? Is there any special meaning behind those names?
Sometimes the simplest answer is the best one. They're called A and the because, that's what they evolved from. A is just a shortened version of ana, and the retain that the sound from E.
Ah, so they wear their history in their names. I like that. But let's delve into their functions. You mentioned specific versus general. Can you break that down a little more for us?
Of course. Think of the, spotlight. It shines on something specific, something that both the speaker and listener already have in mind, either because it was mentioned before or because it's unique, like the moon, there's only one, right? Or the book I lent you. We both know which specific book we're talking about.
So "the" is all about shared knowledge, narrowing things down to that one specific thing. It's like a verbal pointing finger.
Precisely. Now, A, or its other form, N, is more like a wide-angle lens. It refers to any member of a category. So if I say a cat, I'm not talking about any particular cat, just the general concept of a cat.
So the cat would be my mischievous tabby, Whiskers, who's probably getting into trouble as we speak. But a cat could be any feline friend out there.
Exactly. That's how articles can help us navigate through information. They're signposts that help us understand which nouns are specific and which are general.
I'm starting to see these tiny words in a whole new light. It's amazing how much work they're doing in our sentences. But does every language have articles? I mean, what about languages that don't have A or the?
That's a great question, and it highlights the incredible diversity of human language. Articles aren't universal. There are languages out there that get along just fine without them.
No articles at all. That seems strange now that we've been talking about how important they are. How do those languages manage without them?
They use other strategies to convey similar meanings. For example, word order can play a bigger role in determining whether a noun is definite or indefinite, or they might have particles. These are little words that attach to nouns and add shades of meaning.
So it's like different languages have different tools in their linguistic toolbox to get the same job done. But even if articles aren't universal, they're clearly pretty powerful tools for us English speakers.
Absolutely, and understanding how they work gives us a much deeper appreciation for the nuances of our own language.
I'm already feeling so much more aware of these little words. I used to just use them without a second thought. but now I'm seeing them as fascinating pieces of linguistic history that shape how we understand the world.
That's the beauty of linguistics. It helps us appreciate the hidden complexities of something we often take for granted.
This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive so far. But before we wrap up part one, I have to ask, if A evolved from one, does that mean it's only used with singular nouns?
You're picking up on the patterns. You are absolutely right. A or an only goes with singular countable nouns. You wouldn't say a cats, would ya?
You're right, it would be some cats or the cats.
Yeah.
So articles also play a role in marking grammatical number. That's really interesting.
They do indeed, and that connection to number ties into a fascinating concept called grammaticalisation, which we'll explore more in part 2 of our deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of articles.
I'm still thinking about all the insights we uncovered in part 1. Who knew A and thee had such a long history and played such a big role in shaping English?
It's truly remarkable how these seemingly simple words have evolved over time. And speaking of evolution, you mentioned the concept of grammaticalisation at the end of part 1. What exactly does that mean?
Yes, I'm curious to learn more about that. It sounds like a pretty complex linguistic process.
Well, it might sound complex, but it's actually quite intuitive. Grammaticalisation is basically a process where words that originally had a more concrete meaning gradually evolve into grammatical markers. They become less about conveying specific content and more about signaling grammatical relationships in a sentence.
Okay, I think I'm following so far. Can you give us a concrete example?
Absolutely. Let's take the word going, for example. It originally comes from the verb to go, which describes the act of moving from one place to another. But we also use going in a different way when we talk about the future, like I'm going to the store. In that case, going isn't really about the physical act of moving anymore, is it? It has become a grammatical marker that signals our intention to do something in the future.
That's a really clear example. So the meaning of the word has shifted over time to serve a new purpose. In the sentence, it's like going is now wearing a grammatical hat.
That's a great way to put it. And articles went through a similar kind of transformation. Remember how we talked about a coming from the Old English word un, meaning one? Initially, it had a very clear numerical meaning, but over time, it lost that strong connection to a specific number and evolved into a marker of indefiniteness, a way to signal any member of a category.
So grammaticalization is like a word's journey from a very concrete meaning to a more abstract grammatical function, and articles are prime examples of this journey in action. They've gone from being words with specific meanings like one or that,
Right.
to serving these vital grammatical roles in English.
Precisely. And what's fascinating is that this process of grammaticalization is ongoing. It's happening all around us, even today. It's just a slow and subtle process, so we don't always notice the changes in real time.
That's incredible to think about. It's like language is a living, breathing entity, constantly evolving and adapting to our communicative needs. It reminds us that what might seem like fixed grammatical rules are actually the product of centuries of linguistic change.
Exactly. And articles are a testament to that constant evolution. They've gone from simple words to these intricate grammatical markers that help us navigate the flow of information.
That's a great point. We've been focusing on the historical side of things, but I'm curious to hear more about how articles function in communication today. You mentioned earlier that they act like signposts. What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, think about it this way. When we're signaling to our listeners, hey, we both know what I'm talking about here. It's a way of establishing shared knowledge and creating a sense of understanding. In a way, it's like pointing with your finger, but instead of using a physical gesture, we're using a word.
Right. So "thee" is like a verbal pointing finger.
Yeah.
It directs our attention to something specific that we've already established in the conversation or that's unique in some way. And what about a or an? What kind of signal are they sending?
When we use a or an, we're introducing something new into the conversation. It's like saying, here's a piece of information that I want to share with you. It's like opening a new file on your computer.
Yeah.
You're creating a space for this new piece of information.
So A is like creating a new entry in our shared mental encyclopedia. It signals that we're bringing something new into the conversation.
Exactly. And this constant interplay of definite and indefinite articles, this back and forth between the and a, is what helps us navigate the flow of conversation smoothly. It's how we build shared knowledge and understanding.
This is so insightful. I never realized how much thought goes into using these seemingly simple words. It really highlights the complexity of human language.
It does, and it reminds us that even the smallest elements of language can have a profound impact on how we communicate and make meaning. So the next time you encounter an a or a thee, take a moment to appreciate the long journey they've taken and the subtle but crucial roles they play in shaping our understanding.
Well said. I'm definitely looking at them with a fresh perspective now. So we've covered the history of articles, the fascinating concept of grammaticalisation, and their roles in communication. Is there anything else we should know about these linguistic marvels?
There's always more to explore in the world of language. And speaking of exploring in part 3, we'll delve into how other languages approach this concept of definiteness and indefiniteness. Because, believe it or not, articles aren't a universal feature of all languages.
Really? No articles at all in some languages. That's hard to imagine after everything we've discussed. I'm really curious to learn how those languages manage. It sounds like a completely different approach to communication.
It is, and it highlights the incredible diversity of human language and the creative ways that different linguistic systems convey meaning. So if you're ready for a linguistic adventure, stay tuned for part 3, where we'll journey beyond English and explore the world of articles or lack thereof in other fascinating languages.
Welcome back, language enthusiasts, to the final part of our deep dive into the fascinating world of articles.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We've gone from the ancient origins of a and theh to their modern-day functions, and even explored the amazing concept of grammaticalisation.
It's really incredible how much depth there is to these tiny words. But you left us with a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of part 2. You mentioned that articles aren't universal in all languages. I'm really curious to learn more about that. How do other languages handle this whole idea of definiteness and indefiniteness if they don't have articles?
Well, it might seem strange to us as English speakers, but many languages out there don't have articles at all. It's hard to imagine, navigating a conversation without our trusty a and thee. But these languages have developed other clever ways to get the job done.
That's fascinating. So if they don't have articles, what do they use instead?
They rely on a combination of strategies. One common approach is to use word order to signal definiteness. For example, in Russian, the position of a noun in a sentence can tell you whether it's something specific that the speaker and listener both know about, or something more general.
So the whole sentence structure works together to convey meaning, without needing those separate words like a or the.
Exactly. Another strategy is to use context to clarify whether a noun is definite or indefinite. Speakers rely on shared knowledge and the surrounding conversation to make sure everyone understands what's being referred to.
That makes sense. It's like they're relying on the listeners to kind of fill in the gaps based on what's already been said.
Precisely. And then there are languages that use special particles to mark definiteness. Particles are these little words that attach to nouns and add shades of meaning.
So it's like they have these little add-ons that function like articles, but are part of the noun itself.
That's a great way to think about it. It's another example of how languages have evolved different tools to achieve the same communicative goals.
This is all so mind-blowing. It really highlights the incredible diversity of human language. We have languages with gendered articles, languages with a and the, like English, languages with special particles, and languages with no articles at all. It's like a giant linguistic puzzle where every language has found its own unique solution.
I love that analogy. And the beautiful thing is that all these different solutions work perfectly well for the speakers of those languages. There's no single right way to express these concepts of definiteness and indefiniteness. Each language has carved its own path through the complexities of grammar and meaning.
This whole deep dive has been such an eye-opening experience. We started with these seemingly simple words, a and the, and ended up exploring the vast and diverse landscape of human language.
It's been quite a journey, and it underscores a crucial point that we linguists are always emphasizing. Language is constantly evolving. What might seem like fixed rules are actually the product of centuries of change and adaptation. And this process is still ongoing today, all around us.
That's such a powerful insight. It makes me want to pay closer attention to the subtle shifts and changes happening in language right now. Who knows what new words or grammatical structures are emerging, even as we speak.
Exactly. The evolution of language never stops, and that's what makes it such a fascinating field of study.
Well said. Listeners, we hope you've enjoyed our deep dive into the world of articles. We've learned about their origins, their functions, their evolution, and the surprising fact that they aren't universal. So the next time you encounter an a or the, take a moment to appreciate the long and winding journey they've taken. and the subtle but essential roles they play in shaping our understanding of the world around us.
And remember, there's always more to discover in the realm of language. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep marveling at the incredible power of words.
Until next time, happy language adventures.